Do your plants die for no apparent reason? You water them properly, they have enough light, and yet they dry up from one day to the next. According to the oldest traditions, when certain plants die without any logical explanation, they are absorbing negative energy and envy directed at your home. Rosa reveals the 5 plants that act as a protective shield and what it means when they die. Plants that die for no reason, plants die from envy. Rue dries up, meaning rosemary dies why. Aloe vera dies negative energy. Protective plants for the home, envy plants, evil eye plants, plants that absorb negative energy. Why my plants die? Plants and envy, energetic cleansing of the home. Protective shield plants, spiritual gardening, basil dies meaning. One ordinary morning, the plant that was perfect the day before appears with drooping leaves, a soft stem, and an appearance that has no logical explanation. It was watered well, it had good light, it wasn't too cold or too hot. There were no visible pests, nothing had been changed, and yet there it is, dying, as if something invisible had touched it during the night and taken its life all at once. Any gardener who has been growing plants for years has experienced this situation at least once, and the first reaction is always to look for a rational explanation: overwatering, lack of nutrients, a fungus, a draft. But when all the logical explanations are ruled out one by one and the plant continues to die for no apparent reason, one possibility remains that popular traditions from around the world have been pointing out for centuries. A possibility that science cannot confirm, but that the experience of entire generations has also been unable to disprove. In more than 20 years of growing plants, I have learned that plants perceive things that people do not perceive. They respond to stimuli that escape human senses. And when certain plants die inexplicably in a home where everything else is fine, there is a message that deserves to be heard. The 5 plants presented in this video are the most sensitive to the energies of their surroundings. The ones that react first when something is not right. The ones that, according to the oldest traditions, sacrifice themselves to protect those who care for them. Plant 1, Rue, Ruta graveolens, the shield that breaks when it has fulfilled its mission. There is no plant more mentioned in this context than Rue. In practically all of Latin America, Southern Europe, and Northern Africa, the sudden death of a rue plant has a very specific meaning. The plant absorbs something that was directed at its owner. An energetic attack, a negative intention, envy so intense that the plant could not contain it and destroyed itself in the process. Rue functions, according to these traditions, as a living shield. While it is green and healthy, it is fulfilling its protective function. It is filtering, neutralizing, and absorbing all the negative energy directed toward the home and its inhabitants. But when the load is too great, when the envy or ill intention exceeds what the plant can handle, the rue dries up, not slowly like a plant that simply needs water. It dries up suddenly, from one day to the next, as if someone had turned it off. Traditional healers who work with rue have a very specific protocol for when this happens. The first thing is not to touch the dead plant with bare hands. It is recommended to use gloves or a bag to remove it. The second is to take it out of the house immediately, without leaving it wilting in the pot for days. The third is to clean the pot with coarse salt and water before planting a new rue. And the fourth, perhaps the most important, is to give thanks. To thank the plant that gave its life to protect the home. From a botanical point of view, rue is indeed a plant that interacts intensely with its environment. Its leaves constantly release volatile compounds, and its roots modify the chemistry of the soil around it. It is a plant that does not just occupy a space, but actively transforms the environment where it grows. That extreme sensitivity to its surroundings could explain why rue reacts in a more dramatic way than other plants to environmental changes that humans do not perceive. There is a pattern that repeats with rue that deserves special attention. many people report that their rue dies right after receiving visitors at home. Not just any visitors, specific visitors. People who perhaps did not have the best intentions or who carried a particularly dense emotional load with them. The plant was perfect before the visit, and the next day it appears wilted. That pattern, when it repeats with the same people, stops seeming like a coincidence and starts to look like information. It is not about becoming paranoid or accusing anyone without foundation. It is about observing. Plants are silent indicators of what is happening in a home, and rue, due to its protective nature, is the most sensitive indicator of all. When it dies without explanation, the least you can do is pay attention to what was happening around you in the days before. A rule that traditional gardeners follow with rue is that when it dies, it is always replaced with a new one. The space is not left empty. It is not assumed that it is no longer worth having rue because it will die again. A new one is planted precisely because the previous one proved it was working. If it died, it is because there was something to protect against, and that means the protection is still necessary. The transition between losing a rue and planting the next one is a moment that traditions treat with great respect. Some recommend waiting 3 days before planting the new rue in the same pot. Others recommend changing the soil completely, and there are those who add 3 coins to the bottom of the new pot as an offering of gratitude and as a seed of prosperity so that the new plant grows with renewed strength. Plant 2. Rosemary, Rosmarinus officinalis. When the guardian falls, something serious is happening. Rosemary is one of the most resistant plants that exists. It tolerates drought, intense sun, wind, poor soils, and neglect. It is almost impossible to kill a rosemary through negligence, and precisely because of that, when a rosemary dies for no apparent reason, the signal is especially alarming. If rue is the shield that absorbs direct attacks, rosemary is the guardian that maintains the perimeter. It is the plant that establishes an energetic barrier around the home, that maintains clarity and order, that repels what does not belong. A healthy rosemary next to the door is a sign that the house is protected and balanced. A rosemary that suddenly dries up is a sign that something has broken that barrier. In Mediterranean traditions, dried rosemary is interpreted more as a warning than as damage already done. While rue absorbs and destroys itself, rosemary warns. Its death is an alarm that says something in the environment has changed, that there is a source of negative energy that was not there before, or that has intensified to the point of affecting even a plant as strong as rosemary. There is an observation that gardeners in southern Spain frequently share. When the rosemary in one house dries up, but the rosemary of the neighbors is perfectly healthy, tradition indicates that the problem is not environmental but personal. It is not the climate, it is not the soil, it is not the water. It is something directed specifically at that home. That distinction is important because it rules out general explanations and points to something more concrete. From a scientific point of view, rosemary is indeed a plant that responds to environmental stimuli in complex ways. Its essential oils vary in composition and concentration depending on the conditions of the environment. Environmental stress, whether from pollution, electromagnetic changes, or alterations in soil chemistry, can affect rosemary in ways that are not always visible until the plant collapses. It is a plant that holds on until it can no longer, and then it collapses suddenly. When a rosemary dies in the home, tradition recommends doing an energetic cleansing of the space before planting a new one. Burn sage, spread coarse salt in the corners of the house. Open all the windows for an entire day so that the air renews the energy of the space. And only after that cleansing, plant a new rosemary. If it is planted without cleaning first, the traditions say, the new rosemary will also die because the source of the problem is still present. A particularly interesting aspect of rosemary is that sometimes it does not die completely. Sometimes it dries up in parts. One branch dies while the rest remains green. That partial death is interpreted in some traditions as a sign that the negative energy is present but not overwhelming. The plant is fighting, it is containing the threat but at a visible cost. When that happens, experts recommend pruning the dry parts immediately, cleansing them with incense smoke, and strengthening the rosemary with natural fertilizer and water with dissolved salt to help it regain strength. Plant 3. Aloe vera, Aloe barbadensis, the energetic thermometer of the home. Aloe vera is probably the most popular plant in homes around the world. It is in millions of houses because of its medicinal properties, its ease of cultivation, and because it is practically indestructible. Aloe vera survives total neglect. It can go weeks without water and still remain perfectly green. It can grow in poor soil, in broken pots, in dark corners. It is the ultimate survivor in the plant world, and it is exactly for that reason that when an aloe vera dies without explanation, popular traditions pay very special attention. If the plant that survives everything cannot survive in a particular home, the question is not what happened to the plant, but what is happening in that home. In many Latin American traditions, aloe vera is used as an energetic thermometer. When it is green, shiny, and producing pups, the energy of the home is good. The house is clean. Prosperity flows. When the aloe vera begins to turn brown, to become soft, to lose its characteristic rigidity, it is a sign that something is changing, that the energy of the home is becoming contaminated, and when it dies completely, it is a sign that the contamination has reached a critical level. There is a specific indicator of aloe vera that experts observe very carefully: the color of its inner gel. A healthy aloe vera has a transparent, clean, almost crystalline gel. When the aloe vera is absorbing negative energy, according to traditions, its gel begins to darken. It turns yellowish, then greenish, then brown. That color change, which botanically can be explained by oxidation or plant stress, is for popular traditions a map of the energetic load that the plant has absorbed. Aloe vera has a quality that distinguishes it from rue and rosemary in this context. Aloe vera not only detects external envy, but also internal conflicts in the home. Frequent arguments, accumulated tension between family members, chronic stress, constant negativity. All of that affects the aloe vera. It is not necessary for someone from outside to come with bad intentions. If the energy inside the house is toxic, the aloe vera reflects it. That is why, when an aloe vera dies, the first question should not be who is envious, but how the coexistence in the house is. Sometimes the biggest threat does not come from outside, but from within, from unresolved conflicts, from repressed emotions, from the negativity that accumulates when things are not talked about. The aloe vera shows all of that without filters or excuses. The most widespread tradition with aloe vera is to hang it behind the main door with a red ribbon. In that position, according to popular belief, aloe vera functions as a detector of visitors with bad intentions. If the hanging aloe vera begins to dry up, it is a sign that someone who has recently entered the house was carrying a negative load. It is a plant-based alarm system that many Latin American homes have kept active from generation to generation. When the aloe vera dies, the traditional protocol is similar to that of rue. Remove it carefully. Do not leave it decomposing in the house. Clean the space where it was and replace it with a new one. But with aloe vera, there is an important addition. Many experts recommend that the new aloe vera be a pup from the plant of someone you trust, preferably a close family member or a true friend. That emotional bond, that origin from a home with good energy, gives the new plant a stronger base to resist what is coming. Plant 4. Basil, Ocimum basilicum, the plant that dies when the environment is false. Basil has a sensitivity that makes it unique among houseplants. It is delicate, aromatic, expressive. It responds quickly to changes in its environment. When it is well cared for and the environment is positive, it grows with a generosity that surprises, producing leaf after leaf with an aroma that fills any room. But when something is not right, basil is the first to show it. In Hindu tradition, sacred basil or tulsi is considered the most spiritually sensitive plant that exists. Homes where tulsi thrives are blessed homes. Homes where tulsi repeatedly dies are homes where something needs to be addressed urgently. It is not just about watering or light. It is about the quality of the emotional and spiritual environment where the plant lives. Basil has a special connection with authenticity. In several Mediterranean and Latin American traditions, it is said that basil dies when the environment surrounding it is false, when there are lies in the home, when someone pretends feelings they do not have, when the harmony shown to the outside does not reflect what is really happening inside. Basil does not tolerate falsehood, and it responds to it by withering. From a botanical point of view, this sensitivity has a real basis. Basil is extremely sensitive to environmental chemicals, tobacco smoke, artificial air fresheners, aggressive cleaning products, emissions from paints or new furniture. All of that affects basil much earlier than other plants. And if we extend that sensitivity to what traditions call emotional energy, it is not difficult to understand why basil reacts to environments full of tension, falsehood, or negativity. A pattern that is frequently observed with basil is that it dies just when an important relationship in the home is in crisis, not necessarily a loud or obvious crisis. Sometimes it is a silent crisis, a gradual distancing between people who live together, a loss of trust that has not been verbalized, a resentment that grows beneath the surface while everyone pretends that everything is fine. Basil detects that invisible crack and manifests it with its own death. When basil dies under these circumstances, traditions recommend not only replacing the plant, but also addressing what is happening in the home. The death of the basil is an invitation to honesty, to speak what has not been spoken, to resolve what has been ignored. The new basil that is planted will only thrive if the environment it receives has changed. If it is planted in the same falsehood, it will die again. It is that direct. Basil is also associated in many traditions with the detection of envy disguised as friendship. People who present themselves as friends, but who actually feel resentment or jealousy. Basil, according to these beliefs, reacts to those visits in a visible way. Its leaves wilt faster than normal, its aroma weakens, its overall appearance declines right after those people have been in the house. It is a subtle but consistent signal that those who observe it learn to read over time. Plant 5. Pothos, Epipremnum aureum. When the indestructible plant surrenders, it is time to act. Pothos closes this list for a very specific reason. It is the plant that everyone considers impossible to kill. It grows in water, in soil, with light, without light, with watering, without watering. It is known as the beginner's plant because it survives all imaginable mistakes. It is so resistant that many gardeners do not even consider it a plant that can die. And yet, it dies. Sometimes it dies in homes where all the other plants are fine. Sometimes it dies after years of impeccable growth, with no change in its growing conditions. And when the plant that cannot die dies, popular traditions interpret it as the most serious sign of all. Pothos is known in many cultures as the money plant or the money vine. Its heart-shaped leaves and generous growth are directly associated with prosperity and economic flow. When a pothos grows abundantly, tradition says that money flows into that home. When it stagnates, money stagnates. And when it dies, the interpretation is that something is actively and deliberately blocking prosperity. The death of a pothos is taken especially seriously in feng shui traditions, where this plant is frequently used to activate the wealth area of the home. A healthy pothos in the southeast corner of the house, according to feng shui, attracts and maintains prosperity. When that pothos dies for no apparent reason, it is interpreted as a severe energetic blockage in the financial area of the inhabitants' lives. But there is an aspect of the pothos that makes it particularly interesting as an indicator of envy. Pothos is a plant that grows toward where there is light. Its stems extend seeking the nearest light source. And when intense envy is directed at a home, according to traditions, it is as if an invisible light that the plant was following was turned off. The pothos loses direction, stops growing. Its new leaves come out smaller and paler each time until it finally surrenders. Traditions recommend that when a pothos dies without explanation, an honest inventory of personal and professional relationships should be made. Not because envy always comes from close people, but because the pothos, being associated with money, tends to react to envies specifically related to economic or professional success. Someone who resents a promotion, a new business, a major purchase, a visible improvement in the standard of living. That type of specific envy is what the pothos seems to detect with greater sensitivity. When replacing a dead pothos, there is a tradition worth mentioning. It is recommended to plant the new pothos in a pot that contains 3 coins at the bottom and a red ribbon tied to the main stem. The coins reinforce the plant's connection with prosperity, and the red ribbon, a universal symbol of protection in many Asian and Latin American cultures, acts as an energetic reinforcement that helps the new pothos better resist what killed the previous one. A final detail that connects the 5 plants in this video. None of them dies as a sign of punishment. They die as a sign of service. They have absorbed what was directed at the people who care for them. They have functioned exactly as they were supposed to. And their death is not a failure of the gardener, but proof that the plant was doing its job. The correct response when these plants die is not fear, but gratitude. Gratitude for the protection received. And after gratitude, action. Clean the space. Renew the plant. Observe the surroundings with more attention. Identify possible sources of negativity. And strengthen the home's defenses with new plants, with better intention, and with the awareness that the garden, inside and outside the house, is much more than decoration. It is an information system that has been speaking for thousands of years. You just need to learn to listen to it.